Howdy, I'm Dick Perue, a collector of Upper North Platte River Valley photos, history, legends, and a few tall tales. This historical program portraying the rich heritage of the Upper North Platte River Valley was compiled from the files of Bob Martin, the Saratoga Sun, Saratoga and Grand Encampment Museums, and my private collection. Hop aboard for a stagecoach ride through the fascinating, fertile Upper North Platte River Valley. The valley lies in southern Wyoming and northern Colorado and was formed by the mighty headwaters of the North Platte and Encampment rivers and surrounding streams. This trip, we will explore the area best known as the Saratoga Encampment Valley, which extends from the Union Pacific Railroad on the north end southward to just across the Wyoming-Colorado border, a territory over 60 miles wide and containing over 1,600,000 acres. The towns of Fort Steele and Walcott are on the north end, with the Grand Encampment Mining District and Pearl, Colorado on the southern tip. The entire valley is surrounded by the Elk and Medicine Bow Mountains on the east and Sierra Madre Mountains on the west. The Encampment and North Platte rivers run northwest through the center of the Great Basin. This area was settled by pioneers such as Anna Paulson, showing a picture of the stage she rode in on. The Scribner stage is pulled by the famous Crack Six White Horse team and was one of the best teams in the country. Driver of the stage was Charles M. Scribner, one of the pioneers of the valley and proprietor of the stage line which ran from the Union Pacific to the Saratoga and Encampment Valley. The encampment terminal was Rankin and Deal's livery and feed stable. The Concord stage left Walcott at 7:30 a.m. and arrived at the Hotel Wolf in Saratoga at noon, and then on to encampment by 5:30 in the evening. An advertisement for the stage line noted, "Special attention paid commercial travelers. Extra rigs always in readiness to accommodate extra travel. Fishing and hunting parties especially solicited." Other pioneers arrived in the valley by covered wagon on the Overland and Cherokee trails. Fording the Upper North Platte River at Immigrants Crossing. This famous crossing of the Upper North Platte River will be the subject of the second part of this series. In addition to covered wagons and stagecoaches, freight wagons brought supplies for settlers and material to build ranches, mines, towns, and tramways. Bull trains pulled heavy loads into the valley. G-string Jack Fulkerson could be seen guiding his team and wagon out of Saratoga, headed for the copper mines. His name was derived from the fact that he always drove his teams with a single G-string rein and rode the left wheel horse. Early mountain men such as Jim Baker walked into the valley. Baker was first associated with the Saratoga encampment area and later built a cabin and resided across the mountain to the west in the Little Snake River Valley. An article in the 1884 Carbon County Journal states, "Old Jim Baker, the famous trapper, guide, and scout, says the Indians used to bathe in their mineral hot springs called the Indian bathtubs at Saratoga. The land about the springs seems to be neutral grounds between the different tribes. When the smallpox raged so terribly among the Indians, they were accustomed to bathing in the hot waters and then plunge into the cold Platte, thinking such extreme of temperature would prove beneficial. Scores of them died in consequence of such exposure, and the survivors named the place Bad Medicine and wouldn't return to the area." Many other trappers also harvested the rich furs of this area, including the fox and especially the beaver. Businessmen and photographers such as Jack Ledbetter came to the valley from the south, over the mountains from the Meeker and other Colorado goldfields. Others had to draw a pistol to persuade a balky mule to come to the area. Some folks came to hunt and fish as sport, while many others used wild game to feed their families. Cowboys came to tame the West and to break the wild bronco. Cross-country skis propelled kids with dogs through the deep snow of the mountain towns. The High Hat Ladies Society used push poles and long cross-country skis to get around to visit the sick and to visit with friends and family. Many came horseback, along with their pack animals and dogs. A few rode their pack animals to the valley, ranches, and towns. Sleds provided transportation during the winter months in the surrounding towns and mountains. Horses and teamsters would often bog down in the deep snow. Miners built homemade sleds of good wood and drug the sleds into the mountain camps. The wood on the sleds would later be used as sides to hold up canvases for tents. Note the stoves and gear on the sleds. Families were skid into the mountains on homemade sleds. A man and young boy pull a baby and mother along the trail. The sled is also loaded with the family's possessions. Horse and rider braved the deep snow to come to this area. Team and buggy was another way to arrive in the surrounding mountains. With the arrival of the Saratoga Encampment Railway, transportation of mail, passengers, and freight became easier. The Slow and Easy, as it was called, ran from Walcott to Grand Encampment. The first iron horse arrived in Saratoga in the summer of 1907. 100 years later, the tracks were torn up and the line abandoned. The Slow and Easy steams along the Encampment River through the scenic Baggett Rocks Canyon en route to Riverside and Encampment. A crowd turned out to welcome the first train in Encampment on July 18, 1908. The railway was built to haul copper from the smelter. Unfortunately, the copper smelter had burned just prior to the arrival of the first train. Over the years, the railroad did haul some ore, but was mostly used to transport livestock, freight, mail, and passengers. Prior to the arrival of the railroad, the mail was delivered by carriers on snowshoes, horseback, or teams equipped with these Norwegian snowshoes. A few lucky souls drove to the valley in a new vehicle called the horseless carriage. Wagons loaded with wool often required up to a dozen hitched teams to pull the sheep wagon and its heavy loads. 2 stage routes are available for our journey through the Upper North Platte River Valley. The Rankin stage line ran from Rawlins and Fort Steele, and the Overland stage line leaves from Walcott, both to go to Saratoga and then on to Grand Encampment. From the military post of Fort Steele, the stage line makes a daily passenger and mail run south up the west side of the river through Hugo's Gulch and the stop of Rankin in the Sage Creek Basin. In addition to the military post and railroad station, Fort Steele is also the location of the tie loading plant of the Carbon Timber Company. 14,000 railroad ties are taken from the river and delivered on track in the yards of the Union Pacific Railroad in 9 hours with a force of less than 3 dozen men. Several stage lines operate out of Walcott, Wyoming. Coaches and freight wagons use the trail on the east side of the Platte and proceed almost due south, crossing the river at Saratoga. Stops are made at Pass Creek and Lake Creek stations. The amount of freight handled at the small station of Walcott on the line of the UP for inland towns and ranchmen of the Upper North Platte River Valley is immense and compares well with the freight handled in any city of 5,000 to 10,000 inhabitants in the state of Wyoming. From here, many teams of from 4 to 16 horses and trail wagons are on the road continuously the year round, and 32 heavy draft horses have been used to haul a single piece of mining machinery to the encampment smelter. Walcott boasts of a fine hotel and was the site of the first oil rig in Carbon County. The Elk Mountain Mining and Milling Company, located on the southwest slope of Elk Mountain, has deed to 640 acres and has opened up 3 different veins carrying a large amount of high-grade copper ore. 183 feet deep shaft has been equipped with an 80-horsepower boiler, engine, and complete electrical equipment for lighting the mine and operating electric drills. It was this property that delivered the first ore received by the smelter at Grand Encampment. As we approach Midway Flats, we encounter the fast-running mail and passenger stagecoaches along the Overland Trail, headed for the Platte River crossing. At times, the Indians would attack the stages, stealing the horses and killing the passengers and teamsters. In the 1870s, 80s, and 90s, thousands of cattle and sheep grazed the fertile valley along Pass and Lake Creeks and above the bluff known as Sheep Rock. Each fall, huge roundup camps dotted the prairies and stream banks. The first bridge built in the valley was at the Pick Ranch, about 8 miles north of the town of Saratoga. The Platte River is full of trout, and one of the favorite fishing spots along the river is Sheep Rock. The colorful name of the sandstone bluff came from either having a lot of sheep graze above it or from the fact that the sheep and cattlemen got into an altercation and several sheep were driven off the bluff. Lake Creek Ranch was both a military outpost and a stage stop for the Scribner Line. The ranch was once owned by Swan's L7 outfit, the Brower family, Fred Wolf, and Charles Scribner, who stabled many of his horses there. The ranch had a fine home and was the site of many parties for the neighbors, visitors, and friends who dropped by. 5 miles south of Lake Creek was the tiny burg of Warm Springs. The first building at this location was built around the mineral hot springs and soon became the community center, saloon, cafe, sleeping quarters, and the site of the first post office. This is the only known photograph which shows the name Warm Springs just above the open door on the right. Walt French was appointed the first postmaster in 1878. George Condit's mail wagon is on the left. Warm Springs became Saratoga in 1884 and soon grew into an important town straddling the Platte River. Main attractions were healing waters and a river full of trout. Tourism, logging, transportation, reputable businesses, and ranching fueled the town's economy. A 1903 promotional flyer boasted that Saratoga had a population of 1,000, $20,000 in water system bonds, water power practically unlimited, extensive lime quarries, coal supply, 15,000 acres of land under successful cultivation, telephone system, and 2 churches, including St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, built in 1888, and the First Presbyterian Church of Saratoga, established in 1890. Both continue to serve the spiritual needs of the valley. Saratoga had an abundance of saloons and watering holes. The town was inhabited by prosperous and friendly folks. The brochure continues, noting that Saratoga has a hot sulfur springs electric plant with 1,200 lamp capacity, with 700 lamps in operation, and 6-horse Concord coaches carrying passengers, U.S. Mail, and Pacific Express daily between the Union Pacific, Saratoga, and Grand Encampment. By 1903, Saratoga had hotels, cafes, clubhouses, and a couple of houses of ill repute. Downtown were hardware stores, banks, a post office, hotels, saloons, and automobiles on the streets. Located on the busiest corner in town was the famous Hotel Wolf, with its hotel, bar, and restaurant, and even some gambling inside. This rare inside photo shows a gaming table at the bar in the Hotel Wolf. Over the years, local folks had killed a bear or two right in the river or along Bridge Street. The business district continued to expand with the addition of saddle and boot shops, general stores, doctor and dental offices, and 2 large hotels, plus a livery stable, one in cash instead of extending credit. Open-air meat markets were found throughout the town, along with several grocery stores. In 1903, Saratoga built a new schoolhouse with 188 students and 3 teachers housed there. Local folks were proud of their new rodeo grounds and livestock and crop exhibit area where the first Carbon County Fair was held. Community events included big fish fries, where over 4,000 trout were served to those attending. The tiny burg fielded a baseball team that played regular games with adjoining towns. Folks soaked out the aches and pains in the world-famous mineral hot springs. The 1912 girls and boys basketball teams sported classy uniforms. Next, we board the stage for the south end of the valley, past many fine ranches where cattle, sheep, horses, hay, and oats are raised. Wheat and oats from here took first prize at the World's Fair in 1900. The valley is famous for its saddle and draft horses. En route to encampment, our stage crosses Cow Creek, about 8 miles between the two towns. Swan was the first location in the south end of the valley and got its name from the ranch family that settled there. After a few years, Swan became Doggett, named after another family that owned a ranch there. Doggett later became Riverside, and the first council meeting was held in the parlor of the Riverside Hotel. Finally, the tiny settlement became Riverside when it was incorporated in 1902. The picturesque town is located on the Encampment River and is the hub of business and activity through transportation, agriculture, logging, commerce, and tourism. On the east side of the river was the Perue Hotel, one of the finest roadhouses in the country. The first bridge across the Encampment River was built between the town of Riverside and the Perue Ranch and Roadhouse. Part of the first copper smelter in the area was built in Riverside, offering a great view of the Encampment River, Upper Valley, Baggett Rocks, and the town of Riverside. Ore was delivered to the smelter winter and summer by both wagons and the newly constructed tramway. Grand Encampment was a planned community, incorporated in 1897, and was beautifully situated on the Encampment River. It is the established and logical mining and trade center of a rich area with an active smelter and the world's longest tramway. The thriving town was founded by Willis George Emerson. The first town meeting was held in the first building in town. By the early 1900s, the city, as it called itself, had a post office, good wide streets, a smelter, a tramway, hardware and general stores, water, electrical, and telephone systems. Plus, good hotels, including the original and new Bone, operated by Mary Bone. A stage in front of the new Bone Hotel. Mary Bone, proprietor of both the original and the new Bone Hotel. The cornerstone of the Encampment Business District was the E&H building, which housed a bank, barbershop, financial and governmental offices, a store, a soda fountain, and mining headquarters. Towers of the tram were throughout town. Grand Encampment also had doctors and a nice hospital. Churches and elaborate homes were also found throughout the community. The town had lots of women and children, and lots of these unique baby buggies. The baseball team was well equipped with plenty of mitts, baseballs, and bats. In 1915, Encampment had a good mix of automobiles and horses in front of the theater building on one of the main streets in town. Grand Encampment was the centerpiece of the Grand Encampment Mining District and the terminal for the longest tramway in the world. The ore buckets, cables, and towers extended from the smelter and encampment 16 miles up the mountain to the Ferris Haggerty mine atop the Continental Divide. Ore was sent from the mine to the smelter in town. Our journey now takes us out of encampment, up the stage road to the west, and into the towns and mines of the Grand Encampment Mining District in the Sierra Madre Mountains. First stop is at Elwood, a group of buildings 6 miles from encampment. Named for a stage driver, the town was a busy transfer point. Elwood contained about 100 residents and a post office when copper was king. Elwood was also a place to get a good meal. Freight, mail, and passengers bound for higher altitudes were in the winter transferred from wagons or stages to sleds, or vice versa if the load was on its way down. Approximately 6 miles further up the wagon road to the west of Elwood lies the town of Battle, located at an altitude of 9,873 feet and just a quarter of a mile east of the ridge which forms the Continental Divide. It was laid out in 1898 and within 3 months contained 40 structures, including 5 saloons, one known as the Office. The thriving town also had a newspaper, the Battle Miner, 2 hotels, 4 general stores, livery stables, a post office, men's apparel shop, and scores of 2-story outhouses called chick sales for a population of about 300. The Sierra Madre mountain towns were supply centers for the mines and a stopover for freighters en route to Pacific Slope copper mines in the Battle Lake Basin and beyond. The famous Dome and many other mines were located in the basin, as are Battle and Baby Lakes. Rambler lies in the center of the Great Basin and is only 1.25 miles from Battle, but is 1,000 feet lower and accessible by treacherous road down the Pacific Slope. Rambler, on the shore of Battle Lake and an elevation of 9,238 feet, was the site of the Doane Rambler Mine, one of the first in 1881 and most reliable mine in the whole district. Rambler was also a busy town with lots of businesses and a stopping place for freight and passengers en route to the mines. The next town on the route derived its name from prospectors who searched for copper ore in the vicinity. 8 miles west of Rambler, on the banks of Haggerty Creek, is Copperton. It too was a stopping place for freighters, but also served as a supply camp and a post office for sheep and cattle companies. 10 miles to the south of Copperton, at Stamp Springs, was located coal deposits, which were tapped for domestic use and for power supply for the mines. Also south of the mining towns is Green Mountain Falls on the North Fork of the Encampment River. In addition to a favorite fishing spot, it is also a photographer's delight. From Copperton, the wagon road turns north and east along Haggerty Creek for about 3 miles through pines and aspens before reaching Dillon. The town of Dillon was built because the management of the Ferris Haggerty mine decreed that liquor sales in the town of Rudafia be closed. Saloon owners moved their establishments 1 mile back down the creek to a new location called Dillon, after its founder, Malachi W. Dillon. Malachi opened up a boarding house which, supposedly, he ran free for the first year upon the condition his tenants would patronize his bar. Dillon was also the site of many businesses and residents, as well as a stage and freight stop. But the name that is best remembered in Dillon is that of Grant Jones, a writer and editor for the town's newspaper, the Dillon Deviljack. He brought humor and pride to mining towns through mythical creatures such as Googly-Woo. Winters were often long and harsh, and horses and teamsters would bog down in the deep snow along the road to the mines. The mining camp of Rudafia was the end of the line for many freighters who hauled mining equipment to the Ferris Haggerty mine, which by 1902 was the largest and most prosperous one in the entire region. It was also from this mine that the tramway transported the ore to the smelter and encampment. Ed Haggerty, walking with his dog, was a poor prospector and sheep herder who became a copper king after he discovered copper in the region. The Ferris Haggerty mine had 2 levels and a 250-foot main shaft connected with the main tunnel, which was 390 feet long. The deepest working of the tunnel was 530 feet from the outcroppings. The main vein of ore, which was being mined in 1902, was 20 feet in width. The grade of it was 6 to 8% copper. By 1904, the mine was at the apex of its development, employing 200 men. From 1898 to 1904, the mine produced $1,400,000 worth of copper. The mine shaft itself was located atop the Sierra Madre Mountains, and the slope was so steep it was often impossible to get around in the snow. After being stooped or mined out by compressed air drills, the ore was thrown into chutes and run to the surface by compressed air hoists. The ore was then dumped into cars pulled by a unique compressed air locomotive and hauled out of the mine through a wooden covered tunnel to the tramway. Prior to the completion of the tram, the ore was hauled out on sleds or wagons behind 4 or 6 hitch teams. Most of the miners lived in cabins or boarding houses near the mines or in small towns. Cabins were well stocked for the long winter months. As we head out of the Sierra Madre Mountains, let's take a look at the drawing of the proposed new Rambler mine in the Snowy Range east of encampment. It was promoted as one of the premier mines in the Medicine Bow Mountains, yet very little is known about it. Pearl, Colorado is a small town just south of the Wyoming-Colorado border and was a player in the Grand Encampment Mining District. In addition to the town, the area also had a smelter and several mines. Pearl also served the ranching community and attracted many hunters and explorers to the area adjacent to Big Creek Park. Straddling the Wyoming-Colorado state line is the Big Creek Ranch with its large hay and cattle operation. One of the early settlements at the base of Bald Mountain was that of the Kennedy Ranch in the foothills 12 miles east of Saratoga. It was founded in 1900 by Jack Kennedy and his wife. He was the first forest ranger of the Brush Creek District. In 1911, Bald Mountain was renamed Kennedy Peak in honor of Jack Kennedy. For over 125 years, the timber and lumber industry fueled the economy of the valley, with sawmills throughout the forest and in nearly every town. Tie hacks and loggers outnumbered ranch hands and miners for many years. The logs were skid to the mills or decks to be hauled or floated to the mills. Ties were stockpiled in ricks during the winter and floated down river in the spring. Men, women, and kids all worked in the tie camps and helped with the hard work. Tie drives were started on many small streams, such as Hog Creek, down the encampment, or Douglas Creek down the Platte. Tie hacks rode the logs down and kept the ties moving. Logs and ties were floated to Saratoga and taken out for sawing at a mill there. The major portion of the ties went to Fort Steele, where they were snaked out of the Platte River and loaded onto waiting boxcars. Most went to build and maintain the tracks for the Union Pacific Railroad. Others were used to build and maintain such lines as the Saratoga and Encampment Railway. Scenic beauty of this area is best found in the Snowy Range, as shown in this breathtaking view of Medicine Bow Peak. Also note that the Lake Marie and Mirror Lake are also in the picture. Gold and silver were found in the mines at Gold Hill, near the top of the Snowy Range, with the Acme mine being the most famous. Originally, the railroad was to run from Laramie to Gold Hill into Saratoga. However, the mines dried up and the tracks were laid south to Walden, Colorado. By 1900, Ryan Park was a logging camp and a haven for summer campers. In the late 1930s and through World War II, it was a location of a civilian conservation corps camp and then prisoner of war camp. The CCC boys helped build many structures and trails in the forest, as well as doing work at the Saratoga State Park, while the Italian and German POWs worked in the woods and helped maintain the grounds and buildings at the Saratoga State Park. Snowshoeing and cross-country and downhill skiing abounded in the Snowy Range. A ski jump existed on Barrett Ridge, and the jumpers soared above Highway 130 and 10 Mile Inn. 10 Mile is in the center of the picture on the left of the jumper. Medicine Bow Lodge was a summer and winter retreat for both visitors and locals, out for a drive, good meal, or dance. The Snowy Range Road, designated State Highway 130, opened to the public in 1926 and has been a scenic route over the mountains to Laramie since. The dedication ceremony for the new highway drew a large crowd to Lake Marie and Medicine Bow Peak. As early as 1900, trails crisscrossed the Snowy Range, but it didn't draw much traffic until major road improvements were made in the late 1920s, and the road widened, graveled, and finally paved across the Medicine Bow Mountains. A couple of cowboys show off a nice string of fish with hay equipment, including beaver slide, in the background. It's party time at camp after a successful day of fishing and bagging birds in the upper North Platte River Valley. Saratoga has long been known for its great trout fishing. Its first slogan was "Where the Fish Jump." In the late 1920s, the town slogan became "Where the Trout Leap in Main Street." River float fishing and scenic boat trips draw hundreds to the valley each year. One brochure noted, "The ancient saying was, see Rome and die. The modern saying is, see Saratoga and live." Mineral water from the natural hot springs was bottled and marketed throughout the world. It was called Aquatone, the waterway to health, and claimed that it not only benefits the sick, but helps to preserve the health of all who drink it. This is Dick Perue, thanking you for taking this historic pictorial tour of one of the most beautiful places in the world. We wish each of you good health, prosperity, and the time to enjoy the finest trout fishing in the world in the Good Time Valley called the Upper North Platte River Valley.